Good evening. Welcome to my channel. My name is David Okon. Thank you everyone who has been subscribing, who have been supporting me in different ways. Talking about the cost of living, and the cost of living is still the topic of this program. And like I said previously, I'll be continuing to talk about the cost of living as much as I can, and I've been talking about the cost of living in different from different point of view. And at the moment, I'm talking about the cost of living in terms of militarism. Militarism is actually a state of using the military to rule. So the rule of law, there is a rule of policy, the rule of civil rule. Is military rule is actually the opposite of civil rule. As simple as that. And so you're looking at the war in Ukraine. We are actually saying the military war actually created the cost of living. And if you struggle, like I said in the other video, please, if you haven't viewed the other video, try and watch them because I will be repeating some of the points in every video I do, assuming that probably people I must have missed, so that when I speak, people can actually make more sense. Um, when I try to connect what I already said previously with what I'm saying currently. Because in other places, actually said the cost of living is caused by capitalism, and capitalism is responsible for wars because capitalism is the instrument of rule. And if you pay taxes, if you work for a living, you're poor, and you're a victim of the cost of living as a crisis. The cost of living is an issue because the cost is a crisis, because the cost of living affect the poor and the rich. But if it is a crisis, then it is actually poor people who are being affected. Rich people may be affected in some other ways when they're investors, and the cost of living as a crisis can make them more money. That is also being affected. Rich people being may be affected by actually getting richer by the cost of living as a crisis. And the cost of living generally pays more money to the wealthy. And the poor people are actually affected by losing more money because um, that's how capitalism operates. When there's a crisis, actually, the super rich get richer. We saw it in the UK when the government gave, billions of pounds of taxpayers' money to the gas company, energy company. And the energy company who said they are making a lot of money. They make so much money they don't know what to do to use the money with. The purpose of capitalism is actually to look after the ruling class, which is actually the wealthy, the super rich, the few, and it's supposed to protect the few to rule the world and not the many. And we also look at globalization in similar manners. Globalization is the same with capitalism. Uh, Capitalism gone global. It's the instrument of rule. These are actually the causes of the cost of living, fundamental causes of the cost of living. There may be other things. I'm looking at militarism at the moment. These are actually instruments of rule. You cannot rule anyone without a military system. That's what I'm trying to talk about. Russia, the Western world, Britain, America. If you don't have the military, you cannot rule over anyone. You may have money, but money should buy you, in the end, a military system. So you can only rule about people through militarism. So militarism is extremely important in explaining the cost of living. Cost of living is about rule. It's about actually poor people getting poorer, so that it is more effective to rule over them, and rich people get it richer because they are few, so that it is easier to rule over, for them to rule over the world. That is, I'm approaching this topic in looking at the group called Wagner. The Wagner Group is a private company. It's a military company in Russia, and they are fighting in Ukraine. They have been fighting in different parts of the world. And the last time we looked at the other video, we looked at the Wagner group recruiting prisoners from different parts of the world, mainly in Russia. They could actually be recruiting from Ukraine because of globalization, because of technology, transportation and networks. The globe is really very, the world is very global in that, you can go in different places for different purposes very, very effectively. So we're looking now, I'm looking at the resource, the material now, um, about the Wagner Group, which is a private army in Russia. Russia is using, is being funded by the Russian government. This is the information I got. And the Wagner Group is, I'm using it to illustrate the military characteristic in Ukraine, and between the war between Ukraine and Russia, but also it's similar elsewhere because private military, in my opinion, has always been the main, even what we now see as a state or public, whatever we want to call it, one way or the other, because capitalism, everything operates under capitalism. Capitalism is a private system, is owned privately. So from I mean, you can say 90 to 80% of military in the past, in the recent past, and the present, probably in the future, is going to be private. They may not call it private military. There are also laws which say private militarism is not really allowed. But the truth is that any military system is actually private. It's owned by the ruling class. The individuals who rule the world, actually, the more power, especially in Russia, where, someone like Putin has almost an absolute authority. In the UK, somebody like King Charles, because these armies actually fight in the name of the king, in the name of the sovereign, because the sovereign means, he is the King Charles is actually the ruler of this country, and the military actually fight in his name. So it is his army, a British army, actually, the military of King Charles. And if you are an American president, the U.S. military is your private military. If you are a community of ruling class, or actually maybe 10%, the military, the national army, is actually your private military. Such as we see in America, the central bank being a private bank, they're more open about it. But all the systems, even if it is branded as public, it's actually private. Because the people who control it are private individuals with power and wealth. That's the explanation. And people should really begin to understand this concept, because capitalism is privatization. And privatization, which is actually ownership of by private individuals of the economy. An economy actually represents a country and the world. The global economy represents the global world. I mean, whoever owns the global economy owns the world. So the few who own capitalism actually own the world. So the world is that private estate. That is the manner and nature of rule. That's what is happening in Ukraine. So these are features of what you call private militarism in Russia, but you have also mercenaries in America and also private military around the world. There are military. When we say private military, we are assuming that the rest of the military system is not private. But I say every military system is private because they operate under capitalism. Capitalism is a private system, and the only system in the world, we don't have any other system in the world. The only system in the world, including in Russia, China, America, Africa, is capitalism. So all the military system are actually private military. All the banks, everything you see, even hospitals, employment, everything, even if somebody tells you this is a public property, the public is used as a guise. It's like a badge, like, like, I don't know why they say public, because in substance there's nothing like public, and there's nothing like social. There may be specific policies which are actually described as public or social, but that does not really change the fundamentals. The fundamental of rule is capitalism, because it involves ownership, private ownership. So if you see military dictators in Africa, you actually see it very clearly what I'm talking about. Sometimes within the civil system, civil economy, like maybe Britain or most of the developed world, it's not easy to understand the concept. But even civil instruments are actually not civil; they are all militaristic. My argument is that any government, any system is actually a military system, because here in the UK, which is actually the mother of all democracy, every politician, every individual in this country believe there is democracy. Well, democracy is doesn't mean what people think it is. I mean, it's a system of rule. It doesn't represent freedom. There's nothing like freedom if you are under a rule or by the few and not the many. I mean, the point is people should rule themselves. If you rule yourself, then you're free. But there is nothing like that in practice. A few people rule over the many, and it's getting even more intense. It's going to carry on, and that caused the cost of living, because the cost of living as a crisis impact on people who are ruled over. There are many, and they don't have much money. Even if you work, that work is not yours. You may not be experiencing the cost of living crisis, but ask yourself that what if you lose your job? What are you going to do? You're always paying taxes. I mean, how much debt are you in? These questions are indicators relating to assessing the cost of living. That's what I've been talking about through and through. I've been repeating them in every video I produce, because they are very important in the manner of social media. Things get lost very quickly. That's why I keep repeating them. Some people are asking me. There are a lot of people. I'm really grateful to them. They have been really watching my video, and they're just surprised. Why are you repeating these things? Some people will have been watching my video for the first time. They've never watched it. I don't know how many people watch videos. I think probably 4 to 5 billion people in the world watch YouTube channels. Potentially, they would be watching my channels, because you don't know who is going to see it. You're out there, posting your video, and anybody can watch it. And those who are watching it, leave a comment. Let me know. Subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and support the video. Share it with your friends and family. So look at this private military, the Wagner Group. This is helping us to explain the problem of a crisis, the cost of living. It's a topic I've chosen to talk about. I will continue to talk about it. And looking at the material, and there's a lot of issues actually involving this military system in Russia and the Wagner Group. If you know anything about the Wagner Group, please leave a comment below. And I'm looking at the way they treat prisoners and deserters. Prisoners are actually people who are in jail. If you look at my previous video, I said there that there is evidence that the Wagner Group of Russia, the private military of Russia, who are now fighting in Ukraine, predominantly fighting in Ukraine, they are actually recruiting prisoners from prison into the military, in the private military forces. And there are also information that these militaries are not properly trained. These prisoners are not trained properly. They are just sent, and they are used also like as a bait to bait Ukrainian army for the Russians And in the process, a lot of prisoners are reportedly have been killed. Prisoners who have been recruited, probably forcefully, because they are being given some privileges, being paid money and for their partial freedom, if you call it freedom, but at the risk of losing their lives. So it's a form of actually executing prisoners. The details are actually in the archive of the Russian people, Russian military. We will only get an idea what might or might not be happening. So that these prisoners are treated very badly. Also, there's something called deserters. If you are recruited into the military and you leave without permission, you are referred to as a deserter. A deserter, from a military point of view, is a very dangerous thing because you can, you can divulge a secret to the enemies. It can be really a very risky thing, and the punishment normally, generally, within most military establishment, if you are a deserter, if you leave the military without permission, you become a deserter. The general practice is normally a severe punishment, and this happens within the Wagner group as well, according to the information I'm looking. There are certain specific references made about the incidences happening there. So there is somebody called Yevgeny Nazin, one of the leading individual in the military. The article say he was murdered by the Wagner group. So he was murdered. Somebody called Yevgeny Nazin, I think one of the leaders of the Wagner group, probably deserted. So he was murdered. So in September 2022, the group task force, Rushik, known to be active in combat in Ukraine, advocated for war crimes in its Telegram channel, calling for removing body parts and the destruction of prisoners on the spot. So these are some of the descriptions in what they actually do, what they actually advocate. If you know anything about Russia, it's a task force known to be active in active combat in Ukraine. So they are fighting in Ukraine from the Wagner forces. So they advocate for, according to Telegram channel, I think it's a media channel. According to the Telegram channel, they call for the removal of body parts. I know you can only imagine what it means to remove body parts. They are decapitated. Literally, destruction of prisoners on the spot. If prisoners misbehave or do funny things, the Guardian reported that the Russian messages, key points, also includes explicit instruction to murder captives after interrogation and forcing the families of murdered captives to pay Russia for the coordinates of their loved one's body. The coordinates may mean that location, the language they use in this material is really unique. So, so if you want to find where the body of your loved ones who have been murdered, the family, if you're a family, you have to pay the Wagner. I don't know how much they are supposed to be paying, and so it could be that people might not recover the bodies of their loved ones, because if you don't have money, and even if you have money, it's unlikely you will find it, because they are actually normally they're sent into the battlefield without passports. You can't. It's so difficult to identify officially. The prisoners are sent, recruited actually without proper identification, like passport, and that's what's happening. And according to the United Nations supported tech against terrorism director Adam Adley, action of Russia in the conflict demonstrate the concerning prominence of neo-Nazi groups committing atrocities on behalf of the Kremlin. These are the far right-wing conservatives. Individuals, groups, actually, they're not necessarily conservative, but they have conservative belief. And the extreme right-wing neo-Nazis, a right-wing extremists. So these are actually associated with the Wagner Group. On the 13th of November 2022, a video was published showing the Wagner Group executing its ex-fighter, Yevgeny Nazin, for treason, smashing his head with a sledgehammer. This is the kind of killings. They are really gruesome. They're very violent, which is what is expected of a military. Or most military are like that, but some are more crude than others. On the video, Nazin claims that he was captured on the streets of Kiev by known people and brought to a base, though concerns for validity of his words were raised by Ukrainian news groups. A spokesperson to the Ukrainian president's office claimed Nazin had agreed to take part in the prisoner exchange. So previously he gave an interview to a Ukrainian journalist where he confirmed that he was recruited in a prison. So this is actually an ex-prisoner who was actually recruited in the Wagner Group's ranks, as evidenced by this material. Proksin said that the show demonstrates that Nazin didn't find happiness in Ukraine, but made ill yet just people. So these people are actually ill people. I mean, they are wrong, they are bad, but the people he met were just, I don't know what they're talking about. He also called this great show an amazing director work, expressing hope that no animals were harmed in the production. I don't know what they talk about exactly, but that's the kind of thing they're saying in this material. Maybe they're trying to be poetic. I am not so sure. Casualties is produced by the Wagner Group. So according to the Bellingcat's briefing to British MPs of the Commons Armed Foreign Affairs Select Committee on the 21st April 2022, close to 3,000 of the 8,000 members of the Wagner in Ukraine had been killed. So these are some of the figures being produced by the BBC churches and some actually individuals with information. However, according to the BBC News Russian, there is no reliable data on the Wagner's group's losses. So it's not clear, as you always, but you can get what you can get. And normally, this information are actually collected here and there. A number of Belarusian soldiers who had signed contracts with Russian private military companies had been killed during the invasion. This is some of the information regarding activities within the Wagner Group. The private military of Russia, subsequent U.S. estimate in early August put the number of Wagner PMCs killed in the invasion at 5,000, and while the Ukrainian Center for Analytical Studies and Countering Hybrid Threats, CCHT, NGO reported that by its count, between 800 and 1,000 had been killed by early November. So these are some of the figures of what happened in early January 2023 this year, an updated US estimate put the number of Wagner PMC casualties at more than 4,100 killed and 10,000 wounded. Some of these statistics are coming from fairly formal sources. We're looking at the Wagner's activity in Syria. Syria is in the Middle East. So the Wagner Group activity in Syria. So the presence of the PMC. PMC stands for private military companies. They are also known as the Wagner Group. In Syria was first reported in late October 2015, almost a month after the start of the Russian military intervention in the country's civil war, when between 3 and 9 PMCs were killed in a rebel mortar attack on their position in Latakia province. If you comment below if you know where Latakia province is in Syria, because this activity is reported within this information actually refers to Syria, the Wagner's activity in Syria. It was reported that the Wagner Group was employed by the Russian Defense Ministry, even though private military companies are illegal in Russia. Like I said before in the other videos, the Russian public policy, official policy on military, on private militarization is actually to disallow the practice, but with the Wagner operating in Russia, and there's a question as to whether the Wagner Group in the first place actually operate within law or outside of the law. There appears to be evidence, given they operate within Russia. They're the core of Russian militarism. Like I said at the opening of this video, the Russian Defense Ministry dismissed the earlier reports by the Wall Street Journal about the Wagner Group operation in Syria as an information attack. Leave a comment below if you know what information attack is. I think people use information as a weapon of war. If it's an attack, then you're probably involved in fighting one or another. However, sources with the Russian FSB and the Defense Ministry unofficially stated for RBTH that Wagner was supervised by the GRU. These are some of the acronyms. Leave a comment below. Do a research. Wagner PMCs were notably involved in both Palmyra offensives in 2017 and 2016 and 2017, as well as the Syrian army's campaign in central Syria in the summer of 2017 and the Battle of Deir ez-Zor in late 2017. These are places, areas in Syria. During the war, remember, Russians were fighting in Syria, and the Wagner Group were actually at the heart of this operation. They were in the role of frontline advisors, fire and movement coordinators, forward air controllers who provided guidance to those air support and shock troops alongside the Syrian army. These are some of their facilities within the military system, the private military system. Besides fighting ISIL militants, according to RBK TV, the PMCs trained a Syrian army unit called the ISIL Hunters, which was also fully funded and trained by Russian Special Forces. So Russian Special Forces is determinately public military national army, pattern national army of the military, and like I said previously, in essence, every military system in the world is private anyway, because they operate under capitalism. So we're looking at the battle, some of the battle being fought by the Wagner Group. Look about the battle of Kasham. And now looking at the battle of Kasham, if you know where Kasham is, leave a comment below. These are some of the places the Wagner Group fought in different battles. In early February 2018, the PMCs took part in the battle at the town of Kasham in eastern Syria. This is in Syria still, in the eastern part of Syria, which resulted in heavy casualties among Syrian government forces and the Wagner group as they were engaged by United States air and artillery strikes, due to which the incident was billed by media as the first deadly clash between citizens of Russia and the United States since the Cold War. So there was a fight between Russia and America in Syria involving the Wagner Group. Wagner Group fighting along on the side of Russia. So they're very central in Russian led operations or even military escapade. Subsequently, the Wagner Group took part in the Syrian military's Dimash offensive against the rebel El Eastern Ghouta east of Damascus. Damascus is in Syria. So this is actually a report involving the Wagner Group fighting in Syria. This is actually way back in 2018. The whole Eastern Ghouta region was captured by government forces on the 14th of April 2018, effectively ending the near 7-year rebellion near Damascus. The PMC also took part in the Syrian army's offensive in northwestern Syria that took place mid-2019. And so you find out, or as of late December 2021, Wagner PMCs were still taking part in military operations against ISIL cells in the Syrian desert. So these are actually incidences in Syria. There are different theaters of operations in the Middle East and also in Africa, as we will see going forward, looking at this material. And if you haven't subscribe for this channel and support it. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Bye bye.